Hey everyone, my name is Gregory Skinner. I'm a VP here at Escalent, a research and consulting company. And I'd like to welcome you to our panel discussion called The Future Visions of Fleet. Excited to have a few outstanding panelists here today. We have Zach Hales from Geotab, Randy Raudebaugh from CTE, and Jason Kraus from Mike Albert. It's going to be a great discussion. So what I'm going to do at this point is let everybody just take a minute to introduce themselves, and then we'll get rolling. So Zach, do you want to kick it off for us?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. I'm Zach Hales. Currently, I'm the Vocational Segment Manager at Geotab, but my history is kind of unique. I spent 10 years in the construction industry, 5 years in commercial roofing, and 5 years in asphalt and concrete. I one and more, so I went back and got an MBA and went and started working with an MBA program for SRS distribution. While I was there, I ended up becoming the fleet manager and the IT guy for fleet. Spent a couple of years doing that and fell in love with Geotab. They had an opening and I moved over. Here I am. I've been really happy to be here for the last 4 years. We are the leading generator of technology and telematics.
Perfect. Way to go, Zach. Going back to school like that?
Oh, yeah, you got to do it sometimes, right?
Let's hope not, because I don't know I'd pass. All right, next on the list we have Randy Raudebaugh from CTE.
Yeah, I'm Dan Raudebaugh. I'm with the Center for Transportation and the Environment, and I'm a mechanical engineer. Been doing this for about 31 years, and CT is about 32 years old. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. We help people develop, demonstrate, and deploy clean transportation technologies. In the 90s, that was a lot of diesel hybrid stuff. Early 2000s, that was CNG. But since about 2005 and 2006 timeframe, we've been focused on helping people with zero-emission technologies, which include both battery electric and fuel cell technologies and the infrastructure necessary to support them. We do that in 3 ways. We help build and demonstrate prototype vehicles that would be new to the market. Then we have a smart deployment practice where we help operators who are wishing to deploy these technologies do their initial deployment. And then third, if the initial deployment works out and the operator is interested in converting their entire fleet, we will then help the operator with a strategic plan on how you go about doing that. And typically that's given a target date of 2030, 2035, 2040, depending on what the fleet size is and what the duty cycles look like. We kind of help step through that process to make a complete transition. So happy to be here.
Right on. Thanks, Dan. And last but not least, we have Jason Kraus.
Yeah, hi, everybody. My name is Jason Kraus. I'm the Vice President of Operations for Mike Albert Fleet Solutions. We're a fleet management company based in Cincinnati, but all over North America in terms of our vehicles from Class 1 to Class 8. For our approach with our clients, we want to make sure that we're data-driven in what we're doing to achieve what our clients' goals are, and partnering up with a number of different folks, be they dealers, OEMs, service providers, Geotab, and others among them, to pull all that off.
Perfect. Now, just to sort of set the record straight or level set for everybody who's watching, this whole panel is really focused on understanding the adoption and integration of different technologies into the workflows for customers. So whether it be your end customers, also for dealers. The idea here is that, technology, as it becomes increasingly pervasive and moving increasingly more quickly, that it's important to be up to speed and understand how people are using different things. I want to throw this question out to the panel. Can each of you just talk a little bit about the specific technology-based or technology-focused offerings or how you help people?
Yeah, Gregory, you were breaking up a little bit, so I'm not sure we all got that question. I can talk from my perspective because we're very focused on what we do. But we, as I mentioned before, we help folks in 3 ways. We work with fleets that operate medium and heavy duty vehicles. Those fleets can be transit fleets, they can be trucking fleets, they can be delivery vans. They can be municipalities who have a variety of fleets that have sustainability goals about having cleaner technology for their transportation. So the first thing we do is we help the technology providers in our industry find federal, state, and local funding to demonstrate their technology. And typically that's through building prototype vehicles. We built, for example, Bluebird's first battery electric school bus. We built the first ever hybrid electric Humvee. There's a company called Proterra, which was one of the first battery electric bus entries into the U.S. We helped them build their first bus. We've helped UPS with their first hydrogen and fuel cell delivery vans. We've helped Kenworth with their first hydrogen drayage truck, and we helped Hyundai with their first North American deployment of the hydrogen drayage truck, Class 8 truck that they developed and are in commercial operation on. So that's really the first way we help, is through the technology providers getting their technology into the marketplace. The second thing we do is more for the fleet operators, because we have expertise in those technologies and how they work in different duty cycles and different applications. We partner often with fleet providers that are interested in, for example, deploying battery electric buses or fuel cell buses. We help with the solicitation, we help with the bus inspection, we help with the acceptance of the new vehicle, if it's a bus or if it's a truck. And we then help manage that deployment and typically collect data on that deployment for the first couple of years to make sure that the vehicle is doing what it was intended to do and performing as it was expected. The way we make it work is we have some proprietary modeling software that we've developed where we will model the vehicle, we'll model the route, and we'll model the utility rate. So if, for example, you're deploying electric vehicles, we will look at the duty cycle that those vehicles are on. We'll virtually operate them in multiple different routes or duty cycles, and we'll help then do that modeling, help you choose the best rate with your utility. If it's hydrogen, help you source the hydrogen, decide on what kind of station you want to build, how you want to store that hydrogen, et cetera. And we kind of walk you through the process. It really does help the operator. Because of our modeling capability, we really are able to look at, a battery electric vehicle, for example, is great when it's new and the HVAC system's not pulling a lot of load on it. But if it's at the end of its the battery's life, but haven't been replaced yet, the driver's running late and it's the coldest day, what will the vehicle do then? And we help people plan around kind of worst case or at least strenuous, what we would call strenuous case scenarios, to make sure that they're happy with the vehicle, not just when it's new on a spring day, but when the vehicle's a little bit older and it's really, really pushed. And then, of course, the third way we help them is if they've had some successful deployments, if you're operating multiple vehicles in your fleet and you like what the electrics or the hydrogen fuel cell vehicles are doing, we help you develop a strategic plan to replace the entire fleet. And that's very important that you plan properly, because as the technology gets better over time, you want to hit the easiest routes first, and you want somebody independently looking at that, not somebody that's selling you the vehicle, to make sure you're not putting it into a duty cycle where at some point you're going to have trouble with it. And I think a lot of our transition plans end up with some CNG vehicles or some hybrid vehicles because we don't feel like, given their timeline, that the battery electric or the fuel cell are quite ready for those duty cycles. So, those plans can vary widely based on where you are in the country, what your utility rates are, what your access to hydrogen is, et cetera. So we just kind of help you manage all those variables, and we help you make sure that your early deployments are successful and that you're happy with them before you move on to do more work. So that's kind of us in a nutshell.
Right on. Jason, can you talk a little bit about sort of your tech-based offerings?
Yeah, absolutely. First, Dan, that's incredible technology, and you get all the cool toys to be able to work with. That is really fun to hear about. From our perspective, technology takes a lot of different forms because our clients have a number of different sizes, wants, needs, types of vehicles. Mixed fleet could be small stuff, big stuff, different manufacturers. So the first piece of technology I always want to highlight is that we're going to provide our clients and their drivers with a portal, with an app, so that they can see exactly what's going on specific to the fleet, or generic to the fleet, or specific to in particular one vehicle or another. Beyond that, you start looking at other things. You can get into telematics, and Zach can certainly hit on that really, really well for us in a moment. But whether that's standard telematics, if that's video telematics, that's become much more popular. It has been popular for quite some time now on the heavy duty side, but it's become more popular in medium duty. Now it's passing its way into light duty and passenger vehicle as well. And for some clients, technology could have other forms that some people will go, oh, that's not technology, but it is to them, right? A fuel card a charging card. If you didn't have that sort of a thing before, that does simplify things dramatically for a fleet. Toll management programs, things of that nature, DOT compliance platforms. There's a lot of different technology that you can get into. I don't want to bore everybody too much with it, but those are the things that a fleet management company brings to the table to be able to partner up with a wide array of different providers to make sure the clients' wants and needs are taken care of.
Yeah. Um, Zach, your offerings are inherently technology focused. How do you go about introducing someone to the different options that they have?
Jason, I want to thank you for the shout out. Jason and I work together. It's really nice to have a fellow partner on the stage. What we do at Geotab is pretty simple to its core. Now, I say that to say this. It's really not simple. There's a lot of engineering that goes behind it that I don't understand. I'm just a face. So pretty face, you get pretty answers. We connect vehicles. What we do basically is we connect vehicles to data. So fleet operators can stop guessing and start knowing. We're at 6 million vehicles connected globally. We're on 7 continents, including Antarctica, and we process about 75 billion data points a day. But what does that actually mean to you guys listening to us right now? It gives you confidence. It gives you confidence that the data that you're getting from us is not fresh, it's not new, it's proven. And when it's proven, you get to be sticky with your clients. It's kind of like a kid on Saturday morning after Halloween on Friday night. It's sticky fingers. And that's what you want, and that's what we can help provide. Sticky means you maintain that customer long after the sale is over. So you aren't just moving metal for them anymore. You're providing an ROI. And that's how you keep customers for life in your service departments. It's how you keep customers for life as your FMC. You become a partner.
Well, I just want to say nobody wants a kid with sticky fingers around, so let's start with that. The second thing, though, is it's kind of interesting because every single one of you has talked about a lot of different options. There's this huge basket of things that people can do that are going to benefit their businesses. But one of the things I didn't talk about was my role at Escalent, which is really about interacting with fleet managers, drivers, ops people, strategists, marketing people, anybody using the commercial vehicle space to help them understand that space. And when we show up, and we're talking about, hey, how are you integrating tech into your business? Help us understand. They go, hey, man, we're flooded with so many different things. We don't even know where to start. So maybe someone on this panel can just kick it off and talk a little bit about how do you help your clients navigate through this overburdened, oversupplied landscape when it comes to the different technologies out there?
I'll jump in first if it's all right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's an importance to appreciate the fact that there's technology, but you have to have the human side of it as well. So the first point that you have with any existing new client is understanding the pain points. What are we trying to accomplish? What is really bothering you, and digging into it. If you want to do from a continuous improvement perspective and do the 5 whys and ask why over and over and over again to get the root cause of it, you've got to understand and appreciate that first and foremost. There inevitably are going to be different levers, different options, different technologies. And a one-size-fits-all doesn't work. It might work for baking, doesn't work for fleet management. It doesn't work for fleets trying to figure out what are the technologies I want to try? And of those technologies, what's the one I want to take beyond a pilot and I actually want to implement across the board throughout the fleet? So I think there's a little bit on the human relationship piece. Having communication trust is a big factor there. But then based on what you're hearing, what you're learning from your fleet client, you therefore understand and appreciate what the appropriate play or plays may be based on that input.
Yeah, that makes good sense. Side on in?
Yeah, happy to jump in there. It's really interesting when you mentioned that, Greg. I think the best analogy here would be is how do you eat an elephant? It's one bite at a time. So, with me, I always recommend, and especially with newer fleets, hey, maybe let's pick up one problem you're seeing. A typical problem, let's say you have a small fleet you're working with, they're going to have idling. Idling's going to be an issue in fuel burn. So, say you've got a driver, so they've got a fleet of drivers, they're driving 10 trucks, and they're burning real money every day. You say, hey, let's just take 30 days. 30 days, and let's see what your idle time is. You take those small things, and they say, oh, hey, look, we can save X amount of dollars. that gets their attention, and you get their attention there, then it's like a stack of dominoes. It knocks over, and then the more people are exposed to it, the more analytics they want. Next thing you know, you got data scientists next to you and whisper it in your ear. At least that's what happened to me as a fleet manager. And now here I work for a tech company. Never thought I'd be here.
Yeah, yeah. Dan, with your offerings, they're so comprehensive. It sounds like from inception to deployment, you can be at any point in that value chain, and often all those points. What sorts of things do you face? Like, what sorts of challenges do you face in introducing customers to that, or bringing them up to speed is probably a better way to think about it.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting in that, all of our fleet operators have work to do. If you're a transit operator, for example, you got to move people around, and the bus needs to be on time, and that's first and foremost. And at the same time, they often will have a desire to be more environmentally respectful and be cleaner, be quieter. Obviously, for zero emission technologies, they tend to be much quieter as well as cleaner. So you want to be able to take the technology on, but not sacrifice your primary reason for being there as a fleet operator. So what we try to do is first and foremost take some of the marketing data out of the discussion, because if somebody's trying to sell you a battery electric vehicle, they're going to give you a lot of nominal at best performance data. And a battery electric vehicle, if anybody's operated, whether it be other passenger car or been around them at all, the range can vary widely based on weather, duty cycle, how you drive. We see 30 to 35% difference in performance between a good driver and a bad driver driving the same vehicle on the same route. So you have just a lot of variables you have to manage. So what we try to do is go in, and if it's your first experience with the technology, is to get multiple vehicles. We don't necessarily want one that can be parked and you can keep doing your work without it. But at the same time, you don't want to have 15 or 20 that you're depending on right away. So we try to find a sweet spot, and typically it's in the neighborhood of 5 to 10 vehicles. Put them in service. We want to look at all your duty cycles, all the routes that you operate, and put them, frankly, on the easiest route. So you have the fewest variables that you have to deal with. Range anxiety, in particular, can be troublesome with battery electrics. And you're going to get a lot of marketing data that shows ranges that are optimal when you're really operating in suboptimal conditions. So what we try to do is look at we have models of each of the vehicles they're looking at. We build models of those vehicles, and then we look at the routes that they're going to be operating on. We look at the weather data. We look at driving characteristics of the drivers, and we make sure that we put those vehicles into duty cycles where we think that they'll be successful, so that their first experience is a good one, and that they get experience.
Let me jump in for a quick second.
Yeah.
So, when you're talking about modeling, you're talking about the planning. What is it that the customer actually sees? Like, it sounds like you're doing a lot of stuff, but on the customer side, do they have a dashboard? Do you give them reports? Do you sit with them? Like, how do you help? How do you hold their hand through that process?
Right. Well, the modeling I'm discussing is actually pre-deployment, where we would look and show them, how the vehicles are going to do on those routes. Now, once those vehicles are deployed, you're right. We build KPI dashboards, which basically show how the vehicle's doing compared to how we would predict it. The first thing we do is when they get the vehicle, we validate our modeling. We operate the vehicle without passengers typically, or without, if it's load they're carrying, or without load, and make sure that the vehicle is going to perform the way we predicted, so that we're not putting them in a situation that doesn't work. And then, of course, once it's deployed, we have active dashboards. With these vehicles, we're taking sometimes second by second data on where the battery state of charge is, what the temperature of the vehicle is, how the vehicle's being driven, how aggressively it's being driven. We've got all that data. So it's so much data to sort through as an operator. We typically do that for them and give them a nice, easy dashboard to see how well they're doing compared to how well we predicted. And then we work off of that.
Yeah. Zach, you had mentioned, your analogy was eating elephant one bite at a time. And again, another analogy that I really don't want to sort of internalize, but that's fine. How is it talk a little bit about how you convince someone who's really sort of hesitant or reluctant about the tech, to start thinking about it or even adopt it. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because, on the supply side, we often talk about technology in this very sort of grandiose way, like tech, it's going to help you, tech, it's so great. But there's real nuts and bolts around this. If I'm a small dealer or I'm a small fleet, like maybe I don't want a lot of tech. So how's that? What's the mechanism?
Greg, to be honest with you, I think the biggest mistake is leading with technology. Dealers are actually better positioned than anyone here to fix this because they already have trust with our customers. The customer's already bought from you. The customer already knows these folks, or FMC. They already have this relationship. So when someone pushes back, and usually the typical thing right now, the big hot topic button is video telematics. It's almost never really about the technology. It's about their drivers. And drivers think they're being watched by the proverbial big brother. Here's what I say to flip that, and this is very important. Dash cam footage has protected more drivers from false accident claims over the last 10 years than anything else we have in our business. Any other technology that Geotab offers, dash cam has been the exonerating tool. It protects, and it doesn't protect your company. It protects the driver. And that's really what people, you need to let the drivers know that, because that's where the hesitancy is coming from. Also, it's kind of like getting into a hot tub. It takes some time to get in. You got to get acclimated to the water, so you might dip your toes in with a 30 to 60 day pilot just to try it out. It lowers the stakes. No one feels like they're forced into something. It's an opportunity. But I promise, once they see and they've experienced, your drivers have experienced this, that hesitancy will back off. Geotab is very lucky. We've had some great experiences with our FMC partners, and specifically dealers like Rush Truck and Sewell. They've seen this, and they've used this same model. They figured out that being a partner actually builds the trust, and trust is how you become a partner, become a dealer at FMC for life. And that's really it. To handle the anxiety and the hesitancy, I kind of have to go back to it, Greg, one bite at a time.
Well, the hot tub analogy is one I can finally get down with, so thanks for offering that up. Jason, you had talked about this too. You said, hey, you know what? It's people first.
Yeah.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so for us, if a client new to my caliber, or the client's adding an additional service, video cameras was just mentioned, right? We're going to make sure that we've got an implementation team that is personally going to work with the client to make sure that we're all on the same page. What are we trying to accomplish? When are we trying to accomplish it by? How are we going to measure it? Let's make sure we've got a statement of work to find out. And then let's get after it. Let's have meetings that are necessary to pull this off, whether that's one piece of technology or multiple pieces of technology. I agree with what Zach had mentioned. Coupling that with something like video telematics is very, very powerful. And the use, again, of that technology is not just a Class 7, Class 8 domain. We're seeing it more and more frequently in passenger vehicles and light-duty vehicles as well. And you can do the cameras that face both to the road as well as in the cab for coaching purposes. But more than anything else, it's about making sure that you've got the video footage, what's going on outbound, not trying to be big brother. And it's approaching it to make sure that the client and the fleet manager understands and appreciates fully. This is about putting more carrots forward to the drivers, not sticks. You can use gamification, works really, really well in a situation like this. Have a program, have a contest. Who is the safest driver for the month, for the quarter, for the year? It is funny how fast social facilitation will kick in full gear and everybody get competitive on a thing like that. But that's the human side of this, is making sure that you're approaching it from a source of communication, earning the trust for those that are actually not just going to have the technology deployed to them, but they're excited to have that technology added to what is their day-to-day route, what's their day-to-day life.
Greg, can I hop in real quick?
Yeah, absolutely.
The cover double down on Jason and gamification. In the last 6 months, more like 12 months, Geotab launched Geotab, its partnership with Vitality. This Vitality partnership, and what Vitality is it's a company that looks at the driver's metrics and it rewards them. It will give them, anywhere from a $10 a week cute, Starbucks gift card, or they can save it up and buy, big gifts off the Vitality store. But it's that gamification that has drastically improved the driver behavior. Before, when it was just a stick and a constant stick, we really didn't see a lot of change. But since we've added that sweet, juicy carrot, I guess a latte, not my thing, but it must be for them. Since we added the latte, we're seeing increased driver safety, which, of course, when you have increased driver safety, that lowers repair costs, that increases the life of the vehicle, it lowers total cost of ownership. So it's that those little small things really do lead to big changes.
Hmm. Dan, do you see that too? Like, on your side, do you find that your clients sort of dip their toe in and then slowly they get incentivized, or because of the nature of the offering, do they just go in on super large scale and implement and deploy on that level?
Well, I think for a lot of our clients, we have to realize that not all of them, it's their idea. Like let's talk about transit agencies, for example. Sometimes you get very progressive agencies that want to convert their entire fleet, be as clean as possible. But often uh, that goal or that initiative is coming from the city council. It's coming from the mayor. It could be coming from the state. It could be in California and other states. There's mandates to go ahead and convert to zero emission. So you really have to meet the operator, the fleet operator, where they are. Was it their idea? And if it was, then that we can be a little more aggressive, because you've got 100% backing from the operator themselves. If it wasn't their idea and they consider it to be something that they're being required to do and they might not be on board, then we try to take it quite a bit slower with them, with fewer vehicles, and get them comfortable with the technology, because a lot of it's just fear of the unknown. We're working with people that might be complete experts on how to operate that fleet and how to maintain a diesel vehicle, for example. And when you throw battery electric and batteries and battery management systems and inverters into the equation, they're just not familiar with it. And it's just a matter of having a good first experience and doing workforce development and training properly. And what we find is they typically like them better. If you're a mechanic, it's really nice to not go home with grease all over you, because all you're really doing is operating a lap. The worst thing you deal with is dust. And if you're a driver, having a quieter, smoother ride for the vehicle is a lot better. It's just getting through the fear of the unknown. And you have to take that on a case by case, again, deciding whose idea was this and how on the board is the organization.
Yeah, no, that's great. Jason, do you see the same thing? Like, is the ramp pretty steep once they start immersing themselves in the different offerings? Do they tend to quickly adopt more, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, it depends, right? It depends on what exactly somebody's trying to accomplish. But oftentimes we see, well, let's just start with, we want vehicle leasing. We want to purchase vehicles out of a dealer's inventory. Great. All about it. We're happy to buy those, happy to lease those. Well, let's add maintenance programs in place. Awesome. Let's get that done. Telematics and maintenance are kind of peanut butter and jelly. They kind of work together really, really well. Well, that's a natural thing to put into the mix. And you start bundling from there based on what the client's pain points are. So listening to what the client, what the fleet manager is saying, what the drivers are saying. Hey, this is a pain. If you're talking to maybe the chief operating officer, they're talking about uptime, and we have to have more uptime. You're talking to the chief financial officer, they might say, hey, we've got all these different vehicles out there, and on the passenger side, we've got way too much premium fuel being put in those vehicles. How do we scale that back? Again, there's different technologies, different plays based on what someone wants and needs to accomplish. But the nice thing about having a fleet management company involved is we can help to provide all those other value-add services that, say, a dealership can't do on its own, an OEM can't do on its own. Or if you think that you can do it in one spot, but can you do it class 1 or class 8 across all those different manufacturers? And so having a partner that's agnostic on that side to be able to support all the wants and needs while working with you to make sure that all those other aspects are covered and put in, I think that's a really important piece of it as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so let's also a little bit and sort of take a step back. Any lever to pull, and we go, okay, there's tech options that are out there. The very first thing that they have to do is sort of justify that investment, because there's going to be adopting the technology, there's going to be training people, there's going to be maintaining it. Talk a little bit about how you each of you helps facilitate the investment once they've decided, okay, maybe we should take a harder look at different techs that are out there.
I'll jump in. I think that we're talking about technology. And what does technology provide to a fleet leader? Well, it provides you visibility, transparency, helps you see vehicle health, vehicle cost therefore as well. Let you understand everything that's going on. And if you've got signage on that vehicle, if you've got a wrap on that vehicle, that's your brand. So you want to make sure that you're operating safely, and you want to make sure you're not doing harm to potential new business. You're making sure that you're taking care of your existing drivers, the potential folks that may work for you. So all those different factors are coming into play when we're going down this path.
Zach, what about you?
Greg, you were cutting out pretty heavy for me when you asked that initial question. I was hoping I'd pick it up from Jason, but I got lost in his words. Could you ask me that question again?
Yeah, the question was, a lot of companies, a lot of fleets are really hesitant once they think about introducing new technologies because it's a heavy investment around people, product, etc. So how do you help them justify that investment?
Absolutely. Well, as I said earlier, I was a fleet manager for a few years. This was not my company, but it was a company I was a sister company with, wink, wink. We used to write $1 million check anytime we had an accident. It was one of those situations where it was better to get ahead of it than to let it happen. Let us go to court and let it litigate and then ruin our reputation. Or their reputation. So in return, what we did is we introduced the video telematics. That was the first time I was able to say, we're not writing $1 million check today, folks. We were in the right. And that's your ROI right there, Greg. And that's when you adopt technology. You get rid of some of these old practices, and you get rid of a lot of the folks that are willing to just drive in front of a truck to risk it for the biscuit, as they like to say.
Mm. Dan, does this exist on your level? You had talked about how sort of your clients have already made that decision. Is there anything that you do to sort of help grease those wheels?
Yeah, typically our clients, when they're looking to make this transition, the vehicle is going to be a capital investment. It's going to cost more than the vehicle it's replacing. And then typically it's going to be less operating costs. So those are often different budgets that have to be looked at differently. What we try to do is on behalf of the industry, we've done a lot of national studies on maintenance cost. I think some of the early studies that were done when the technologies were new, it was really hard to get at what the maintenance costs were because they were under warranty and the OEMs were taking care of the vehicles for the first couple of years. But so just on behalf of the industry alone, we've done a whole lot of work kind of quantifying what the actual maintenance costs and savings are for battery electric and fuel cell electric versus diesel or gasoline vehicles. And then we, of course, with them try to do a life cycle cost analysis based on how often they're operating it and what their utility rate structure is. And it's unique. It's, we've got folks that if you're powering a battery electric vehicle that are paying 35 to 40 cents a kilowatt hour in California, we have folks in Oregon that are paying 3 or 4 cents a kilowatt hour. So it's really hard to say what your return on your investment is going to be generically. You really got to look at, what's their utility rate structure? What does their operating look like? You're basically going to save more money per mile. So you have to operate the electric vehicles more miles to really realize the savings in operational cost if in fact the fuel's that much cheaper. And of course with hydrogen, we see hydrogen for as low as $4 a kilogram. Fuel cells are twice as efficient as a gasoline or diesel engine. So that's basically the equivalent of $2 a gallon gas. But we also see it, where it's $15, $20, $30 a kilogram, depending on where you're sourcing it, because it's not a commodity in the country yet. There's some federal programs that are working on that to try to stabilize that. But again, I think it's really important for fleet operators that you do your homework for your use case, for your duty cycles, for what your utility rates, what your weather patterns are, because everybody's answer is going to be slightly different.
I'm super glad that you brought up this notion of ROI. So just about 2 weeks ago, I did a presentation on telematics specifically. And one of the things that I found was, that when it came to that, and you talk to the fleet managers, how they measure ROI is like this, finger to the wind. There's nothing really specific about it, and Zach, you sort of echoed that a little earlier. We're talking about risk aversion and risk mitigation, but really not in hard, tangible terms. It's like, hey, you are not going to go to court and it's worth whatever that costs. But when we're talking, whether it's Jason, Dan, Zach, wouldn't the sale and adoption of technology tools and implements be more effective if we could put hard numbers around them, considering that this industry is all about TCO and measuring pennies?
Well, Greg, I think we can put hard numbers around them. And here's how. Maintenance and uptime. So, one thing that Geotab does very well is that we're able to help predict, it breakdowns and issues. So what I've always liked to say is, look, when I was a fleet manager, not to keep going back to that, but that's where my head's at today. A day that a truck was down cost me $60,000. And that's a real number. That's loss of delivery. That's having to rent a new unit. That's loss of the driver's wages. There's all kinds, and that we spent many months figuring that out. Now, what was great about that is now that we can go back and say, oh, hey, look, once we got Geotab up and running, we're like, oh, hey, I'm starting to notice that at about 3,000 miles, this particular brand of vehicle has an issue. We were able to red flag that early. And instead of having downtime, we were able to just schedule it on our own. That vehicle is not broken down. I don't have and what would always happen is I had 3 people mad at me at the same time. I had the branch manager that was, losing his revenue. I had the customer that wasn't getting their material. And I had my chief operations officer who was mad at me because, I wasn't on top of it. Those 3 people are now no longer mad. So we're saving those salaries from, ripping on the old fleet manager here. And we're making it a lot simpler. We're able to say, hey, instead of putting this vehicle on the road, let's get it fixed now, schedule it out when we're not working. And that way, that's your true ROI and your true metric on the number.
Yeah, I think for us, we've chosen to take a path where we're looking at what the diagnostic codes we're reading off the vehicles. And we've got a team of ASE certified technicians, you could say, aged out on wanting to turn the wrench in uncomfortable manners. And therefore, they're looking day to day to go, okay, this is what the OEM recommends at this specific engine hour, at this specific mileage. We got to keep these things in mind. Based on what I'm seeing here and here and here, let's also apply a little bit of human factor on this. And therefore, here's the specific service pain points that we would recommend doing maybe proactively. We know we have to do this today. We know we have to do a tire rotation date, but let's also knock out this and this, and let's have that vehicle down once, not twice. Let's make sure we're utilizing mobile maintenance where it makes sense. And it's great to see more and more dealers and other service providers offering mobile maintenance, especially for your medium duty, heavy duty units, but also it's not exclusive to that. And so when you're operating in a depot situation, when you have those vehicles there and they're parked overnight, when they're parked on the weekend, it's fantastic to be able to get all that work done. And now you don't have any downtime. You've got uptime. You're ready to rock the moment that everybody comes back on the shift. So again, there's a mix of the right technology and a little bit of human intervention to have that back and forth. And specific to the return on investment piece, when we sit down with our clients, when we have a client partnership review, we go through those return on investments. And from a maintenance perspective, first time we're going to look and sitting down with somebody, it's not uncommon to see that number be 4, 5, 6, 8 time multiplier on whatever the actual investment was. And that's because we've got the right know-how with the right technology. It's a very powerful equation to get after.
Yeah. Yeah. Can each of you talk a little bit about the sort of challenges that you face, with potential clients or even current clients sort of pushing back or pumping the brakes a little bit?
Well, I mean, I'll jump at first. A lot of what we do is try to find federal, state, and local funding to help finance that transition that I've been talking about to zero emission. It's been increasingly difficult with this current administration kind of backing away from clean technologies and going more towards fossil fuels. Now and it's very tough on an operator who has a plan to transition to all of a sudden have what federal money they thought was available to them, literally pulled out from under them. In some cases, even in projects that's been obligated to them, it's been taken away. So, that can make it difficult. So what we try to work through that as best we can. We try to look at other options. When we do a transition plan on behalf of a client, we often will have to we have the ability to go back and retrofit that based on what funding is available and how fast they can move, because there's so many variables that go into those. And we were talking about ROI earlier. Well, ROI is tough enough for a vehicle that you know the cost on, you know what you're going to be paying to fuel it, you know what that duty cycle is going to look like. But with the transition plans where you're trying to look out for 10 or 15 years, you're often trying to predict, what's the battery cost going to be in 5 years? How much savings am I going to get? What are my utility rates going to be in 5 years? So with those, they can be a lot more tricky. And what we try to do is use current data, current rates, current cost, and then develop those plans in such a way that when we go back, we can go back in a year and just update those current costs rather than predicting future cost. So, and as we update these over time, and we've done about 80 of these for fleet operators. As we update those over time, we can see the industry growing. We can see costs coming down. We can see as operators get better and get comfortable with the maintenance costs go down as well, because there's just a learning curve to get over. But there's a lot of math that goes into it, and a lot of patience, and working with our clients, we try to not just help them deploy the vehicles, but find funding to deploy the vehicles as well. So those funding streams can vary widely from administration to administration. So a lot of variables that we deal with.
Yeah. Jason, what are your thoughts?
From maybe, I think that's fascinating to think of it from the long-term 10, 15-year out perspective. In the immediate, we're talking to brand new fleets that we haven't worked with before, and that fleet manager has a certain way that they've run it up to this point in time. And so, said it already, understanding where they're at, but also, why did we do it this way? Why did we factory order this model? Why did we purchase from this dealership? Why did we make this selection from an upfit perspective? We've had a couple clients recently, and you look and go, you had, for the same vehicle, like 10 different upfit situations that you went into it with different content providers, and there's no consistency there. And you've got ergonomic issues, and you've got, it becomes a challenge. So sometimes the first thing that you're looking at is saying, help me understand what we were trying to do before, which is not to say that the way it was done before is always wrong, but we want to understand that historical context. And then from there go, okay, here's a couple different options, how we think we could do it in a different manner. And here's what the benefit would be. You're going to get it faster. You're going to get it less expensive. You're going to have more consistency. You're going to have perhaps a better residual value on a vehicle. You're going to have this experience when we're talking about technology. So it's important to understand some of that historical detail. And again, not to say no to any of it, but recognize there are times where it should stay, and there are times where maybe it should no longer be true.
And to piggyback on that, Jason, is we provide the tool for you guys to analyze that.
Yep.
And that's where Geotab becomes so universal, is that as Jason takes the tool that we provide and the data that we provide, and he's able to have those conversations. And that's how Geotab is providing its support as well, Greg.
Do each of you have examples where you get a fleet manager or an operation, and they're super early adopters, gung-ho, really ready to embrace tech, and then of course there's the people who are hanging back, right? The last people in line. Like, talk a little bit about the differences in the mindsets of those two different sets of constituents.
I can jump in right now. In 2017, the ELD mandate was passed. So we're 9 years, almost 10 years in with the transportation and logistics industry having telematics and being heavily involved. It's, from a business standpoint, it's a conversion business now. Everyone's got it. Everyone's passing back and forth. The parity is definitely there. What I'm excited about is the laggard industries, agriculture, for example. Agriculture, I went from working transportation logistics and having conversations with them to working with agriculture folks. Transportation logistics has got to the point that they're so advanced that they're expecting all this predictive maintenance and all these great new tools. Whereas I go to agriculture, they're just excited to see where their vehicles are. And that's the key, is knowing how to work between, hey, these folks over here are just so happy to finally see these small details, and balance that out to where we're not overloading them with this, these details that are required for the T&L industry. And that's Geotab about 2 years ago realized that, hey, we can't market to everyone the same. So we've gone through and essentially created 9 separate businesses underneath the Geotab banner. That's what my business is, the Vocational group, and that includes the agriculture and the transport and the construction and the utility workers. And that's I am just in the right point where I can see, oh, if I can try to prevent the future from this happening here by helping them adopt, as opposed to just trying to convert. We can create customers for life that way.
Yeah, I think I go back to maybe a comment Dan had made from an early adopter perspective. We had a number of clients that said, "Hey, I went all in on EVs a couple of years back, and it was exciting, it was fun, it was new, but it was also challenging. It was really challenging. They we're going to do this, and we're going to do it right now, and we got after it. But as we talked through it, we said, hey, here are some of the challenges we're going to experience early on based on the technologies we have at this point. If we wait 2 or 3 years, these other technologies are going to be there. Still want to do it. And then you put it in play. And because of the variability on temperature, on topography, on driver behaviors, you can have wild swings there. So that was certainly, that'd be the early adopter side of it. I think on the laggard side, yeah, there are a good number of times where we sit down with the fleet manager and we say, hey, talk us through what maintenance looks like. How are we doing this? Where are all your records? And they point to the file cabinet or cabinets plural in the corner. And you go, oh, okay. So this is one way to do this, but let's also try and utilize pulling this data in a more efficient manner. Let's start utilizing the numbers so we can have more predictive capabilities. And so you have to understand what they've done. But I've seen both sides, the early adopter and the laggard side. They're both challenging for different reasons, but it's about having that human relationship, that interaction to meet them and have a proper consultation at that moment in time. There's no one size fits all. It's figuring out what the appropriate thing specific to them, their wants and their needs.
Dan, any thoughts on this one?
Well, I mean, you can imagine we have a wide variety. We have some folks that are very, very eager to take on the new technology and to make a big change. And then we have others that have been doing, if you're an expert in on how a diesel bus operates, it can be threatening to you to all of a sudden that not be the standard anymore, especially if you've spent 30, 40 years doing maintenance on diesel buses. So again, it gets back to it's helpful that we're a nonprofit, I think, because we're not really making money on any recommendations we make. And I think we find ourselves often downplaying the performance of the technology, especially when compared to the folks that are trying to sell it, because really it's about meeting expectations and creating the right expectations. Because right now, a battery electric medium or heavy duty vehicle is not a drop-in replacement for diesel. I mean, diesel feels pretty dang amazing if you think about it, with the potential energy and the volume that you've got it in. And even though you're super inefficient converting that energy to motive power, it's just, there's really nothing on earth that competes with it. So it's difficult. And so I think the first step is going in and saying, you're not going to be able to operate things the same way because you don't have the same technology, especially with battery electric. Fuel cell, we're seeing it come much closer. In fact, that technology gets better every day. Right now for transit, for example, we do a lot of work with transit buses. I would say that a battery electric can replace probably 70 to 75% of the diesel buses out there on a one-to-one basis. And fuel cells more at the 90 to 95, but we're still not quite there with a vehicle that you can just drop in, with a diesel bus. Some of these vehicles operate 16 hours a day. You drive it all day, you bring it, you wash it, you fuel it, and you take it out and do it again, and you do it every day of the week. And that can be very, very tough to compete with. So it's really setting expectations, and we're often lowering expectations for the folks that are really gung-ho about it. And sometimes we're establishing higher expectations for folks that are being reluctantly dragged in this direction.
Yeah, and it's sort of interesting because in each of your own ways, that's what you're talking about, right? Sort of managing the client's expectations on what's going to be delivered and making sure that whatever it is that you're bringing to them actually sort of outperforms, that bar that you've set. I want to talk about AI real quick. And the reason being because we've got some dealer folks on this call, about a lot of dealer folks, and this might be the one area that they can sort of embrace, from a tech side to really sort of enhance their businesses. Because so far, what we've talked a lot about the customer side, but from a dealer side, AI might be, that sort of win-win situation. So talk a little bit about your experience with AI and the sorts of benefits that it offers, either you and or your customers?
Yeah, I'll jump in first. AI is a blessing and a curse in our field right now. I think the curse is if you're going to use AI to try to say, well, I want you to look at my whole fleet and what vehicles are out there that could replace them that are cleaner or that are zero emission. The AI is going to be pulling from a lot of OEM fact sheets that, again, are not real world data. It's optimal data. So if you're using AI to try to plan a transition, you could get in a lot of trouble because you're not really dealing with real world data. On the other hand, if you're pulling like Zach does, pull data off a CAN bus on how the vehicle is actually performing, and you have a lot of data to sort through, it can be immensely helpful to be able to sort through that data and find what you're looking for with minimal human intervention. So, in my business, it's really a mixed bag, and it can be very, very helpful, and it could also be very dangerous. And I think that's probably true in any application right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think, AI or other technologies, it's like cruise control. There's an application for it and there's an application not for it. So you have to recognize that. I went to a conference last fall and one of the speakers said, use a 20-60-20 approach. Spend 20% of your time figuring out what the right prompt is. And it's a lot easier said than done. And what is the right prompt? Let the AI do the 60% in the middle, but then you got to come back and you got to fact check it. So if you upload, as Dan pointed out, a whole lot of data, okay, but you also have to go back and you got to verify and validate that the inputs, the outputs, the math involved kicked out appropriately. So you can't just accept it as is, because you can't go back to your supervisor or whomever it might be and say, well, AI said this. No, you said this because you copy and pasted from AI. You have to go back and do that fact check. But there are lots of good applications. There are a lot of not good applications, but that comes from doing that fact checking, doing that verification thing.
It's interesting, Jason, you say that. I actually have used AI to write a prompt for AI. It's been better. It's how I get, especially when I get deep into when we're pulling 75 billion data points a day. So AI has been part of our technology long before it was the buzzword it is today. And this is how we're able to get our predictive fault analysis. It's able to spot patterns in engine data, and that's how we're able to utilize our predictive maintenance. It's how we're able to do collision reconstruction. AI tells you exactly what happened, who's at fault, what speed was involved, and that it matters a lot for liability. I mean, for fleet managers, they can just ask questions in plain English and get answers. It's not a lot of, before you had to talk to the mechanic, and then the mechanic had to talk to the fleet manager. The fleet manager that had to talk to his boss. It was a lot of just translation issues. But we don't have that problem as much anymore. As I mentioned earlier, for dealers, the thread ties it together. Safer drivers means fewer accidents. Fewer accidents means lower insurance costs. Better maintenance means more uptime. More uptime means lower total cost of ownership. And that's what AI is actually doing for that fleet. It's providing you the opportunity to be that partner with that customer and continue to be their dealer for life.
Got it. All right. So we're at, oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Okay. We're actually at time. So I just want to wrap this up. If you could each give me one thought on where you think the future is headed for commercial vehicles and tech, just really briefly, that'd be fantastic. Who wants to kick this one off?
Autonomy. That's the word I'm going to use. Get ready for autonomous, Class 8 vehicles especially. I'm seeing it. I live in Texas. I'm seeing it more and more on my highways.
Jason, what are you thinking?
I could go a number of directions. I agree with Zach. For line haul application, I think autonomy is a really big factor. Perhaps not next year, but in the next number of years, you're going to see more and more of it there.
Okay.
I would say the environmentalists will come out of me now, but we can, as a country or as a group, go back towards burning fossil fuels. That doesn't necessarily make them sustainable. It just is kind of pushing the problem we were trying to solve off on our kids and our grandkids. So for all fleet operators, I would encourage you to start becoming familiar with vehicles that don't burn fossil fuels, because those are in limited supply. And the sooner you get used to it and the sooner we invest in it, the easier that transition is going to be.
Right on. Well, thank you all for a super informative session. I'm sure we could have kept talking about this all day long. And thanks, Zach, in particular, for those analogies that will keep me up at night. I appreciate that. Um, so for those of you watching, thanks for spending your time here, and just stay tuned for the next session.